Do 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 do.
Do 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 do. That gets stuck in your head for realsies.
That's the point. That's what John Williams gets paid $20,000 a year to do.
The boom boom booms and the
Bum,
do
bum,
do
bum,
do
bum,
do.
bum, 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 bum. If you've never watched this,
Boom 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 boom.
the whitest kids you know skit. Yeah.
But that's in Last Crusade, remember? Boom 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 when they're at the castle.
Yeah. Well, it's the same theme throughout the whole series, so of course it's going to be there. What's up, everybody? Can you hear us? Can we be heard good?
Are you hearing our bums?
Have you seen the whitest kid you know skit about John Williams?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so tonight is finally Indiana Jones, the whole franchise. Let's get into it, or else we'll be here for 14 hours straight.
Boom 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 boom.
Let's kick it off with 1981, baby. Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's when I was a baby.
We went and saw it tonight. Jamie and I did the new one, and half the boomers were asleep. They were like,
They were.
it's like Indiana Jones in the old folks' home. Right?
This was a Lucas and Spielberg,
It was.
and it starts off with Pachamama, your favorite.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that if you look it up, that actually is Pachamama. So shout out to Vatican II. Shout out to Pope Francis here. Raiders of the Lost Ark is doing that Vatican II Nostra Aetate theology. It is Pachamama, the gold headed thing that he puts the bag of sand there to even it out. It's Pachamama, and Pachamama is a human sacrifice deity.
I feel like this is one of the most iconic scenes of all cinema, with the boulder rolling.
Well, that and him staring at the head, weighing the stuff.
Yes.
And, yeah.
So this is the introduction to Indiana Jones, right?
And what year is it? 36?
Yeah.
Okay, so Indiana Jones kicks off in, we think this is first, but actually we find out that in the timeline, isn't Temple of Doom before it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually Temple of Doom is a year before
Chronologically
what happens in Raiders for whatever reason.
Yeah. But Indiana Jones is going to become a great American hero, earn a lot of commendations. He's going to
He does. He wins
spy.
He wins war awards, and a lot of people don't know that he was a spy, and it's actually made explicit before the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls. It was actually in the TV show Indiana Jones, Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. Yeah, there was an episode where he was working with the OSS. And then they include that in the Kingdom, the Crystal Skulls narrative, where he's said to actually be in the OSS. And that's relevant because he's actually based on a conglomeration of various archaeologists who actually were recruited into OSS work. And so I've covered this in my old essays. If you go back to Jay's analysis, you can find my essay on Raiders, and I linked to the Inquiry, which was the academic predecessor to the OSS. So let's see, I need the disambiguation. Go ahead. I can't find this.
So he is a nerdy professor by day and hunky treasure hunter by night.
Yeah, well, he takes offense to being called a grave robber later, but yeah, that's basically what he is.
And they want to make it known all the girls have a crush on him as a professor.
Well, he is, he's archetype hero, right? He was already Han Solo, so.
Yeah. And so he's teaching, and the Army intelligence comes in to see him because they need an expert on the occult.
And this is another key that lets us know that, right, Indy works with intelligence. He's basically, as Baselit Analyzer said, and I'll give props to Kotel and BLA because they did a really good analysis of Raiders as well, noting that he's intended to be a spy. He's the American James Bond, right? And there's actually a lot of sequences in Indiana Jones films that are basically copy and pasted from some of the Bond films. Even to the point, obviously, when we have, James Bond, Sean Connery playing his dad.
Mm-hmm. I like how it delves into the supernatural a lot more than James Bond does, or even Mission Impossible or adventure movies like that. This one is full on spiritual warfare because he's going for the Ark of the Covenant, and then he's going for the Holy Grail and all of these like relics of spirituality.
Yeah, and that's based in reality. I'm trying to find my old analysis. I think this is it. Yeah. That's based in reality because the Tiny Mustache Men followers, the players of Yahtzee, they had a fascination with power objects. And they also had this idea that they could be the preservers of high culture. Mm-hmm. So that was the basis for taking a lot of the cultural artifacts and the power objects, was that they would preserve it for the future Reich that they were setting up. And my priest father Vladimir has a crazy story about the Tiny Mustache Men followers actually did get one of the old icons. They got one of the famous Russian icons, and I think eventually it got returned. But there's a crazy story of them marching in and taking it, basically. When they tried to go to Russia. Wow. Yeah, but this is the entity that was behind this was called the Ananurbe, and we'll talk about that in a minute and the figures involved in that. But this is kind of real. But I would also add that sometimes these missions for so-called power objects, they were just covers for spy work as well. So we'll look at some of Mark Hacker's articles covering that. But yeah, here's the inquiry. I found it, by the way. This is the predecessor to the OSS, and you can see it here. That was Woodrow Wilson's basically establishment intelligence apparatus. This was who was running things right through Colonel Edwin Mandell House and Walter Lippmann, right? So this is the Tavistock British intelligence figures that were controlling Woodrow Wilson in America at this time. This is where we get the Federal Reserve. But that couldn't happen without the inquiry, who are the predecessors to the OSS.
So he's working at the University of Chicago, which is...
Well, no, actually, at first he's in Connecticut, and that's important because this is telling us that basically he's at Yale. So that's why he's recruited into OSS, is because it doesn't say, I forget where it says he is in Connecticut. It's a made-up college, but it's a stand-in for Yale. Yale's in Connecticut, right? Mm-hmm. So Indiana Jones is basically recruited into being, OSS at Yale. Mm-hmm. And that this is not unheard of either, because guess what? Anthropologists, archaeologists are also classic spy covers, and this is well documented in writers on the history of espionage. I've actually covered it in my analysis of David Price's book, Weaponizing Anthropology. So we did a whole lecture on this on my channel, and Price is who wrote this piece for The Guardian about how, since they're experts on local culture and they hang out with odd places, they're good with codes. It's no wonder that so many archaeologists have worked for intelligence services, writes David Price. And so he goes back even to the 1917 to early cases of people who were recruited into spy work, even that early. That would be I think that would be even maybe, that would be inquiry era. So this is, again, totally relevant to James Bond stuff, because there's famous books on the history of the rise of the OSS and CIA, like Robin Winks' book, Cloak and Gown. And this is the scholars who were recruited into the secret war. So, yeah. In other words, PhDs, professors, archaeologists, anthropologists are oftentimes, not always, but in some cases, recruited into espionage work. Mm-hmm.
And they are recruiting him because Tiny Mustache Man is obsessed with the occult and looking for religious artifacts.
Well, this ties into the stories with Crowley and Ian Fleming, because British intelligence knew that they could use the occult to, in certain ways, influence Tiny Mustache Man. Mm-hmm. So, and Ian Fleming was involved in that.
So, they have to go to Egypt and Tanis to look for the Ark of the Covenant. But first they have to go to Tibet. So that's a strange...
Well, Tibet is interesting because that's like the Ascended Masters, right? Exactly. So Marion Ravenwood is hanging out in Tibet, and she's there because...
Or Nepal. What is the difference?
They're right next to each other.
Okay.
So they're basically, one's right in China, one's right on the border, like the Wall of China, right?
But they're up in the mountains with the Kuthumis and the Maharaja. What are those
No,
things?
he's in India. The Maharaja is Indian.
I know, I'm just kidding, but like, what are those things called? Like Maitreya's?
The avatars, the Ascended Masters.
Yeah. And when they just float and like have sit crisscross applesauce and float, that's what they do.
Yeah, the BS from Madame Blavatsky, right?
Yeah.
But that's relevant because Blavatsky most likely was British intelligence and was working with. She was a Fabian socialist. She was working for, the Milner, Fabian, Rothschild circles, right? So she had a role in doing espionage work. I would assume under the guise of, I'm going to the Himalayas, right, and to Tibet and all this stuff to meet with the Ascended Masters. But in reality, Tibet. That's why Free Tibet was such a. Yeah, get her over there. So, yeah, I was going to get you to get that book.
And where's the tiny mustache man?
It's in there. I didn't bring it in.
Oh.
We don't want to get the stream shut down. You can't talk about actual existing books because we live in a child world where you can't talk about books.
On my Rockfin channel, I'm going to do Tiny Mustache Man in the Occult book.
Right. Well, her philosophy, Secret Doctrine, influences Tiny Mustache Man.
Yeah.
So, what's that guy's name? Alfred Rosenberg. When he dreams up the whole mythology, it comes from these sources. Anyway, all of that is in the background of the Indiana Jones films, and because Raiders of the Lost Ark deals with the Ark of the Covenant, then in this storyline, Tiny Mustache Man wants to get the Ark because it's an object of power, and he thinks it would like give him control of the Hebrew god. And you have this French archaeologist character, the Belloc character, and Belloc thinks it is a radio for God, right? It's a radio to talk to God, right? So, but back to the university, the point there I wanted to make is that it's very relevant that it's basically Yale hinted at. And then later on, Indy specifies that he worked with and was trained at the University of Chicago, which is Rockefeller, right? Is who founded the University of Chicago. And they're also basically the family who more or less founds and gets the OSS and the CIA going. So, you could basically say, like Ingdahl does, that the CIA is like the private army of the Rockefeller. So that is again telling us that Indiana Jones is operating in a espionage and a spy capacity, as well as working with military intelligence in the first one.
Mm. So what is the Anunnurbi?
The Anunnurbi is the Tiny Mustache Man group. Himmler was involved in this, who were going to get the artifacts of power. They're the ones that were researching. Like the Spear of Longinus? Yeah, the Spear of Longinus, which comes up in the new one. Yeah. Let's see. Not this. Yeah. So one of these figures is a guy named Otto Rahn. This is just a mainline military historical website. And, it talks about him wanting to, go excavate and find these objects of power. It was in a university that Ron learned about the Cathars. I've done a whole lecture on the Cathars, the sect that arose in France, and they were the subject of the Albigensian Crusade. This had an effect on him because then he went after the Grail. So the Grail lore and this connection to the Gnostic notions of the Grail bloodline and the Dan Brown kind of stuff, right? Holy Blood, Holy Grail, all that kind of mythology. It actually did have a foothold in some of the Tiny Mustache Man followers. And so Otto Rahn is one of these figures who thought that if he could, get the mysteries of the Grail lore, right? The head of the notorious Schutzstaffel, Himmler, was obsessed with mysticism, and esotericism. He is also fascinated with the Grail legend and devoted many considerable resources to locating it. And you can actually watch videos of them going on these journeys to Tibet, right, trying to trace the true mystical bloodline of the Teutonic Knights going back to the Ascended Masters, right? But remember that it's not just that. Tibet is also a geostrategic location. That's why the CIA was involved in the Free Tibet stuff, because it had to do with, CIA wanting to influence through the Free Tibet movement and the Dalai Lama opposition to the Chinese Communist government. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know that, but that's public history.
So they're collecting the mystical artworks of power, go to Tibet. You said cover for espionage.
Right. So Mark Hackert has a good espionage history archive about even the Tsar sent out spies dressed as llamas. And so you can begin to see how these esoteric missions can function on two different levels, right?
Yeah.
They can function as real seeking of lore, or they're spying, or they're having meetings with high-level handlers. You see.
What about those guys that hang out at the airport in the orange robe? What are those called?
Moonies?
No.
Yeah.
Hare Krishnas?
Those are Moonies. That's what a Moonie is. They follow Sun Myung Moon. That's a CIA cult, yeah. In fact, Bush, they used to own the Washington Times, and they either bought or sold it to George Bush Sr. What about it?
I was just thinking of places where people can hang out and be spies dressed as weird religious and...
Oh, yeah.
Guess who else is a undercover tiny mustache man spy?
Charlie Hunnam, or whatever his name is. Who?
The monkey.
Oh, that's right.
He's an assassin.
There's an assassin monkey. That's right.
Remember, he's like bad dates.
Mm-hmm. Bad dates.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find this article and I can't find it. Go ahead.
Well, they have to go see a Sufi mystic for advice about the Ark of the Covenant. Remember?
Mm-hmm. Here it is. Great game in Tibet. Here's the article I'm talking about. If you're looking for a fascinating read along these lines, it's a essay that Mark translated many years ago from Russian intelligence, and it's about the history of the Tsar Romanov sending spies undercover as mystics. So you can see them there. They pretended to be traveling mystics on their way to Tibet. But they were actually doing a spy mission for the Tsar. And so again, Tibet's obviously a really important geostrategic region, but it also has this history of, a lot of esoteric stuff going along with it. So there's the palace where I think they tried to get into the palace or something like that. I don't remember the whole story, but it's a good article.
Do you remember that silly thing, Operation Acoustic Kitty? Was that real?
No, what is that?
Trying to turn cats into spies.
What?
You never heard about that?
I don't think so. This sounds like a dumb Disney movie.
Well, no, that monkey made me think of, I was like, they did experiment. I mean, they have like...
Well, John C. Lilly was given, right? He was given the dolphins LSD and to try to turn them into...
But if you go to like San Diego, they have enlisted sea lions and dolphins, that they keep and use for things. So they use animals. But I just was remembering Acoustic Kitty.
Okay. I like it. Is Acoustic Kitty an assassin, or is he just he just like annoy people?
Device.
He annoys you with his allergy powers.
No, like he can walk around the corner and be like this and recording a conversation between spies. Just like, I'm just a kitty.
People love those kinds of stories of like, oh, they created a fake bug and it could fly into the room and spy on you. People love that stuff. But here's the other article that Dr. Richard Spence, who we've done an interview with about the background to this, he notes there the connection between Madame Blavatsky and espionage. So when she was going to meet with Nicholas Roerich, right, and other, quote, ascended masters, he has the thesis that some of her ascended masters were her handlers. Mm-hmm. Anyway, where are we at? Back to India.
Okay, back to Egypt. They have to put the jewel in the staff of Ra to illuminate the whole room, and that's kind of like his initiation into mystical.
It is. In my analysis, I wrote about this as basically it's perennialism. So where's my analysis at? I guess I gotta go back. Yeah, I wrote that this shows us that traditionalism, or the perennial philosophy, is really what is the basis of the Indiana Jones franchise, because the theology presented is really one where all of the different religions are manifestations of this higher Gnostic kind of religion. And that's why Indiana Jones can experience the reality of the Ark of the Covenant and the Hebrew God. But then in Temple of Doom, he calls upon Shiva to defeat Mola Ram. Right? So it's basically all the religions are just paths to a higher supra-religion, which is either Neoplatonism or Perennialism or Gnosticism, right?
Well, he's going to drink from the Holy
Or
Grail
Masonry.
and become a Lumen.
Well, that's the Gnostic Grail lore actually ends up being true, right? Because we
Yeah.
have the whole Templar theme in the third one. But yeah, exactly.
But first, he has to go through his trials. And one of those is the snakes. Remember Jordan Peterson's snake evolution?
I've been watching the Jordan Peterson, courses, and he's like, "Well, when you were in a tree 10 million years ago, and you didn't know what to do, and there's a tree, there's a snake. You see the snake, it embeds in your genetic memory. You got snake fear. It comes out, So it's not that comfortable, but that's what you got to do,
Yeah.
right?"
Yeah.
So Indiana Jones has to face his fears, his archetypal fear is the snake, his trauma. His dad's is rats, right? So, anyway, that definitely, as soon as I saw the snake stuff, it was literally right after I was listening to Jordan Peterson talking about, you were a monkey in a tree and you saw a snake, Were you a monkey in a tree a million years ago and you saw a snake?
No.
Then why are you afraid of snakes when you see them? There's no other explanation. You had to be a monkey in a tree a million years ago. A boat. What's that about?
He wasn't afraid of them until he fell into the snake pit.
Right, so he had to have an actual traumatic experience to develop the fear.
Yeah.
Right.
But the Ark of the Covenant,
Junior.
in 1 Kings 14:25, it talks about putting the Ark in the darkness. The Pharaoh put the Ark.
This is crazy. I didn't realize this. I don't think it says Pharaoh put it in darkness, does it? Did you look that up? No. The movie is referencing the Well of Souls, right, which is where the Ark actually is. And that was a real thing that Shishak, the Pharaoh Shishak, had. And then I remembered, hey, actually Shishak is mentioned in the Bible. So I didn't realize this, but Spielberg or whoever wrote this actually was pulling from ancient Israelite history, because there is an attack. There's a battle between the Israelites and Shishak. Shishak in 1 Kings 14:25 wins, and he spoils the temple. So one of the theories is that the Ark could have been taken to Shishak, to his Well of Souls. But you're right that before Indiana Jones can get to the Well of Souls, they have to go decode the head of the staff of Ra from a Sufi mystic, which tells us that it's perennialism, right? Because when they're in Egypt, they don't go to a local mosque. They go to the Sufi mystic who can decode the headpiece of the staff of Ra, right? Mm-hmm. And then when he goes and when he does the ritual right at the right time, the whole room becomes illuminated. So he's enlightened, right? He receives his illumination when he does the Egyptian ritual. So in other words, he's having to master the mysteries of Egypt before he can then pass on to master the mysteries of the Hebrew God, which also is Mosaic, because it says Moses was learned in all the mysteries of the Egyptians.
Oh, right. I think one of the funniest things about this movie is the submarine controversy.
I forgot about.
How did he ride the submarine?
I didn't even realize that this is a big nerd debate. But yeah, if you watch it, you're like, wait a minute, he's on top of the submarine when the pirate ship gets raided. How does he ride this all the way to the fake Tiny Mustache Man base in Greece?
Yeah.
And then there is actually a scene that didn't make it into the film. So there actually is. Supposedly what he does is that he just ties himself to the periscope, which for whatever reason never descends. And that's because apparently these early U-boats at this time couldn't go down that far. And it was really difficult for them to totally submerge. So they would just kind of keep the periscope up. So that's how theoretically it's supposed to be the case, that he actually can ride it all the way to Greece or wherever.
Well, do you think he gets supernatural powers from these relics that allow him to sustain injuries and do feats of strength?
I read another thing where, I think George Lucas was saying that if you watch the old serials that this is based on, the old adventure stories for kids. He's like, the hero was kind of semi-divine in the sense that he could almost always, get out of he had a divine providence was magically with him, basically. And that happens with Indiana Jones all the time, yeah.
So they get to the tiny island near Crete, and this is the famous scene that everyone likes to point out when the fly goes in his mouth. Remember
Yes,
that?
there's a fly that goes in Belloc's mouth, and I noticed it ever since I was a kid because I grew up.
Kids love that.
I grew up with the whole Indiana Jones trilogy on VHS, watching it a million times.
Yeah, and so kids are always like, wait, now, and
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, very beautiful, Marilyn Van Wood. When they're drinking, right?
Yeah. So the French guy Belloc, he starts cosplaying as a Levite priest.
This is weird, and BLA has the theory that he's actually doing some kind of Crowleyan thing because he has this staff which has a goat head on it, and I don't know why or where they got this idea for the goat head. I mean, it does kind of seem Crowleyan, but the rest of the outfit that he's wearing is the ephod and the high priest headgear and the breastplate with the jewels of the 12 tribes of Israel. So it's weird because Belloc should have known that, if you're going to do this quote ritual or whatever, like you're supposed to be a Levitical priest, but Belloc's not a Levitical priest. So I don't know where he concocted this idea that he could do this quote ritual.
Yeah.
And I don't know where they get this idea with a goat's headed staff. It's all very bizarre.
Well, it breaks all of the artificial light bulbs. I mean, when they open the Ark of the Covenant, this is also one of those scenes in cinema that no one will ever forget the first time they saw that, with the faces melting and the, eyeballs. And
Yeah.
Do it.
Do it. Do a face melt? How do I do that?
He goes...
Jamie thinks that impressions means that you can, make your face melt like a guy in a movie or something. I can't do that. But one thing I don't understand, well, you could say the scapegoat, but I'm saying I don't know of anything in scripture that there's anything to do with a goat's headed staff, right? I mean, Aaron has a staff that blooms. But yeah, I mean, the Ark of the Covenant is for us, right, it's a symbol of the coming incarnation, right? Because Jesus is Emmanuel. He's God with us. He is the Ark is a kind of a theophany. It's God embodied in time and space, letting us know about the future theophany of the Son of God being born of the Virgin Mary. So Mary's an Ark as well, right? But in the story, the Ark is a object of power. It's like a super war weapon.
It's the fire of God. And you said uncreated energy.
It does have it does actually demonstrate the cloud and the fire and whatnot that we do see in the book of Numbers, which is a divine theophany in the law. But what's interesting is that in this story, and this might come from rabbinical tradition or something, I don't know where, but the idea is the Ark basically it's like a giant Ghostbusters ghost trap.
Yeah.
It opens up the ghost and then they suck you into the Ark, which is bizarre. Well, so it's like it traps the souls of the people that fight against Israel.
Do you think that's the angel of death when it turns?
Well, I first thought that, but then I read people saying no, that it's supposed to be the souls, and this is why Shishak called it the Well of Souls, and he put the Ark there because it has the souls of those that lost the battle. So it's like a vacuum cleaner for souls, right?
Yeah.
It's like Luigi and Luigi's Mansion where he vacuums up the souls.
Well, it turns into a pillar of fire and a cloud that sucks everything back into itself. And,
so actually, this essence energy distinction right there, proven in Raiders of the Lost Ark. So theophanies, essence energy distinction, boom, right there. Raiders of the Lost Ark argument, disproving Raiders of the Lost Ark disproves Islam. I like that.
And they didn't look at it, so they were allowed to live.
Yeah, so that's why somebody's saying the Ark has souls. Well, that's one theory on why when Belloc opens the Ark, all of these spirits come out. And they first have human faces, but then they turn to demons. So, okay, yeah, it could just be avenging angels, or it's the souls of those that lost the battle, and that's why Shishak buries the Ark in the Well of Souls so that it can't release, right, the souls that it captured. Mm. Also, there's the real story is that Shishak might have hidden the Ark because then the Israelites would lose their power, right? This is one of the theories as to why Shishak would hide the Ark. But as you guys know, we've done interviews with my godfather, Dean Arnold, who has a book on the history of Ethiopia and the theory about the Ark being in Ethiopia. So there's all these different theories about where the Ark went. Nobody knows. Go ahead.
Well, they locked that up real fast and put it in Area 51 or wherever the heck that.
Where's Dean's book? Keep going. Trying to find Dean's book. Go ahead. Keep going.
Well, the scene at the end where they
I don't see it.
Put the box among like all of these other relics that they're keeping at Area 51. Okay. Or not Area 51, but something like that.
It is Area 51.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then they tell him that top men are working on studying
right.
it.
Unknown Empire, that's Dean's book, right? And he talks about the theory of the Ark of the Covenant, right? Mm-hmm. Being in Ethiopia. Go ahead.
That's pretty much it for Raiders of the Lost Ark. What do you think?
I mean, on the one hand, it's like there's some interesting, good versus evil themes. It has, so much Old Testament history actually packed into it with the reality of Shishak and all that. But ultimately, it's not a consistent theological narrative because, as we see, the religions, right, of Judaism, Christianity, Islam is really truly Sufism. Christianity is really a kind of a Gnostic Grail lore, right? And Hebrew theology is just another one of these perennial philosophies, right?
What about Salah? What is he with the fez? What are those called?
He's just a regular Muslim, but he's the one that takes Indy to see the Sufi mystic.
Right.
Guys, if you would hit like and share, we are covering the Indiana Jones Pentocracy, all 5 of them, whatever that is. And you can support the show via super chats through Streamlabs right here.
They took the stones from
we
here.
We might sing more.
They took the super chats from here.
How about do 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 do?
If you want to do it, Willie Scott, sit down. If you want to do a Willie Scott rendition, you're welcome to. Anything goes.
Anything goes. Do it.
You notice how it doesn't make sense? If she's like on a Broadway, Vegas-looking theater stage, and then she's in Lao Che's like one-room club.
There's this like magic trick that you can never figure out when you're a kid. When they're pulling the red scarves out, and it becomes one red
bump, bump,
scarf.
bump, bump, bump. Yeah.
Like how they do that.
Anything goes.
This one starts at Club Obi-Wan in Shanghai.
Everybody, I'm sure, has seen that Easter egg.
And they're looking... No, he found Nurhachi.
Inside are the remains of Nurhachi, first emperor of Manchu dynasty.
Is he a triad or a Tong?
Exactly. I said, Jamie, is he one of the Tongs of triads? Because he is. He's Chinese organized crime, so he would be a triad or a Tong.
Yeah.
Right?
I think this one has the best one-liners, too. Someone said, "No time for love, Dr. Jones."
No time for love, Dr. Jones.
Yeah.
Fortune glory.
Yeah.
Fortune glory.
You love Short Round.
Maybe he like older women. Oh, what is this? Maybe he like older women. I've heard the stories of the Thuggy. I've made a vow that will never happen in my kingdom ever again.
This one's about child TRAFF.
This one gets pretty dark and crazy. Yeah, it's like human yes, and then it's like child slave labor. Yeah, right?
Indy, cover your heart. Remember that?
Yeah.
I love all these. The chat is going crazy.
I think at one time, my brother and I, like we could literally do the entire dialogue of Temple of Doom. I don't know why. I've seen Temple of Doom so many times, but I used to know the Prime Minister's whole speech. Like, His Imperial Majesty, the Guardian of Panko, right? Salim Singh. I used to know that whole line. I knew the whole dialogue between Indy and Lao Che. So, yeah.
What about Dan Aykroyd's cameo? That's pretty memorable.
All Weber. Dr. Jones, I'm All Weber.
Yeah. So after that crazy plane crash where they escape on the raft down the Himalayas.
Well, I was hoping in the new one that we would get an update on Lao Che. What's Lao been up to, right? I mean, I want to know, like, how was Lao Che Freight? Was it successful? Did Club Obi-Wan continue? Did it fail? Like, what did Willie Scott go back to Lao Che? Like, what's he been up to? What's Short Round been up to?
Exactly. I wanted to see if they would bring him back, but he's gone.
Excuse me. Oh man.
So they land in
I got all these old books out.
Village in India that's cursed. They have no crops. They have no kids.
On the way to Delhi, you will go to Pankot.
They gotta eat the bug.
Pankot's not on the way to Delhi. You will go to Pankot Palace. They took Shivalingam.
They took the stones from here. He's been saying that all
day long, baby.
Yeah, he's been practicing
They
that.
took the super chats from you.
Support us via the super chats so that I can take the super chats from you. On the way to watch the stream, you will super chat to Jay.
She's like, I had bugs for lunch. Remember that?
Yep, so many memorable lines.
Every line is quotable.
When they do the Broadway version of Temple of Doom, I'm going to audition because I can play any of the characters. I could even do Willie Scott's lines.
So, lording over this village that is cursed is this Bangkok palace.
Yeah, so the loss of the magic stones, the Shankara stones, leads to the cursing of the village. And there actually were these supposed stones that Shiva gave to the priest Shankara. Right, that's why they're called the Shankara stones.
Yeah.
They have magical properties, supposedly.
Yeah.
So that's all real.
Well, they could be like
real myth.
meteorites or something crazy like that.
Well, I mean, it could just be made up. But as we all probably know, the Shiva Lingam, that's the pee-pee.
Yeah.
Right. It's a little, it's a little chode, as they say.
Yeah. They took Shiva Lingam.
Is that a fat male member? A chode?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what they are, little fat male members.
It's the Temple of Kun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was my job, by the way. Because the religions are always coming back to like the generative principle, right? The pagan religions are always generative principle stuff. Mm-hmm. And this is no different with Hinduism.
Well, it's putting evil over the whole country because the palace has the power of the dark light, they call it.
The power has the power of the dark light. Yeah. So the dark light, we find out, is the dark sleep of Kali, right? Because Indy has to drink the ritual black magic juice, the prune juice of Kali, right? Which puts him into basically an MK Ultra trance. Like, he goes crazy. So they mind control Indy, which is pretty wild. Mm-hmm. By the way, the Thuggies were real. I'm sure everybody knows that there really were Thuggies. And if you guys remember, Alex had on that former military guy / journalist, Michael Yon, I think. And he, for whatever reasons, like, he's had to go track down people who are into this stuff. Cannibal cult people. And I think he mentioned Thuggies.
Probably. And there's another...
Well, there's areas of India where there might still be this kind of stuff. That's what I'm saying.
There's another cult that starts with an A, and I can't remember exactly what they're called, but yeah, they like live in the dead people's ashes. And
that's it. Yeah. And because we watched a horror movie, and they were in that. Remember? Mm-hmm. But they were good guys. They were helping out the single mom.
Oh, yeah.
Single mom can always call on the power of the Hindu human sacrifice cult. Right.
Well, they made a point that the villagers would not pray to the evil god or something. They're like, we pray to him.
Well, they said, come worship our God. We said we will not pray to the evil god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they get to the palace, and there's British people there. Captain Blumbert from England.
Right, well,
who's
this is during
just pop by to make sure you're not doing your human sacrifices still.
Well, this is during the time when it's still British colony, right?
Yeah.
And so that's relevant because we find out later on that Indiana has his OSS work meant that in many cases he worked with British intelligence. And that actually comes out in the new one, right? In the new one, he works with a British archaeologist from Oxford who's a spy, I think, and I think they identify him as Toby Jones plays him, right?
Yeah.
So he's a Basil Shaw, right? So he's working with British intelligence.
So they're making sure that... Wasn't he part of the cult, though, or no?
Who?
The captain? The British captain?
No. The Prime Minister is part of the cult.
Oh, right. Okay. Because the whole thing's run by little Joffrey Matahara, whatever was his name.
Raja Joffrey. Right?
Yeah. Rajoffrey.
Rajoffrey.
He says, I have heard the tales. Do it.
It's not run by him, though. It's run by Mullah Ram.
Yeah, but he's their,
The front.
Yeah.
So there's a front that there's this, child king, but it's actually a human sacrifice death cult, human trafficking cult, right?
And the child
Run
king
by
is
Mullah Ram.
under the spell of the Mullah Ram and the Kali.
Yeah, they've all been given this black drug juice of Kali, the prune juice of Kali, right?
Yeah, unsweet cream. And they eat snakes, bugs, monkeys, brains, eyeballs. That's really memorable. I think that's why a lot of people love these.
Oh, snake surprise.
Right?
Chilled
They cut the snake.
monkey brains.
Chilled monkey brains.
This racist.
Yeah.
Racist. How dare they put that in the movie? It's racist.
This movie's full of bugs.
It is a very buggy film, absolutely. By the way, guys, you can support us via Super Chats as we are giving you an analysis that no one else gives you. No one else breaks down the movies in terms of what's real and what's fake like we do. Keeping it real on that real and fake tip.
So the palace is built over caves and mines, and they got their own lava pit, which is cool if you want to be an evil empire.
All right, so we have a Calabasas theme. We got to go to the underworld. And actually, Willie Scott ends up almost sacrificed to the underworld, right? Kali, right? Indy goes down and rescues her from the underworld, right? Calabasas. And Persephone, right?
What do you think about how he can pull the heart out and the guy still lives? And then when he goes down there and is on fire, then the heart bursts into fire.
Well, this is like Crowleyan level stuff, right? Crowley was getting his theory because he talks about the fresh organs. Because they're fresh, they still have the living power, the vital power within it.
Oh, yeah.
And he says that that's why, you can go to places in Africa like Ghana or wherever. Who was that emperor who was a cannibal? The African emperor cannibal? Jean Baudel Bokassa. Yeah. So Bokassa, who was doing human sacrifice cannibalism all the way up until like the 80s or 90s, right? Like the philosophy of it is that like if you're a warlord and you beat your enemy, you want to do it as quick as you can because the life force is still there. So Mullah Ram has the ability to remove the organs, right, with the life force totally intact.
Not only that, they got their whole...
they got a Novus Ordo mask going on. They got a heavy, hardcore... They got a traditional thuggy rite.
With child slave labor going on.
It's a tradition. It's traditional. It's
Yeah.
the traditional thuggy rite liturgy down there.
And then if you drink the blood of Kali, you go into the black sleep of Kali. He's like, Indy, wake up.
Well, the cult is using mind control, right?
Yeah.
So literal trauma-based mind control because Indy has like the worst trip ever, right? Like he has like a total, hell trip there laying on the altar.
What's worse?
When he goes into the black sleep of Kali.
What's worse than tripping balls?
Tripping balls on Kali's black prune juice.
Tripping.
The prune juice of Kali is just some shit you do not want to drink.
No.
Right?
Yeah. So
he even references the black juice of Kali in the new movie. He's like, you haven't done what I've done. You haven't had the black drink of Kali. Right?
Yeah,
remember?
the bitch shot 10 times.
Yeah.
But then he becomes a True believer.
You would be a true believer.
Yeah. You think Molaron did a good job being creepy in this, I think.
The Hebrew God would fall, and then the Christian God would fall, and then Kali will rule the world.
Mm-hmm.
Ha ha ha! Mr. Jones! Dr. Jones! You will not win!
Yeah, I like Mola Ram. He's a great cult leader. Mola Ram should take the... I mean, if Francis should resign, right? Pope Benedict resigned. You could have Francis resign, and Mola Ram could be the new pope. Like, he could just take Roman Catholicism to the next level, right?
What if you gave Pachamama to Molaram and sent him...
No, I'm saying exactly, right? Francis already prepared the world for Pope Mola Ram the first.
Yeah.
Via Pachamama, exactly.
Do you think that the fire breaking his trance is kind of an illuminist idea? Because it's
I
all
thought about
about
that, but
dark of Kali and fire of...
Yeah, the light wakes you up.
Yeah.
And India's already been enlightened when the Ra room was filled with the light of Ra.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, they had to do the catabasis, the Persephone, the burnt offering of Willie. And this one also features voodoo dolls, which I didn't know was Indian.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of dumb. I'm pretty sure that, I mean, maybe India has voodoo, but I think the voodoo dolls was just thrown in there to make it a plot device.
Yeah. And then at the end, he actually prays to Shiva. Remember when they're wrestling over the stones and the crocodiles?
This is where we get the Freemasonic, all religions are, they're symbols of the one true higher religion, the perennialist element, because Indiana Jones, throughout the film, doesn't believe in supernatural, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then he calls on Shiva. He says, "You betray Shiva," blah, 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 blah.
Well,
he starts reciting some prayer. And then the stones catch on fire and burn Mola Ram.
That's kind of where he gets his courage from sometimes, because he doesn't really believe in the supernatural.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, but that's also... He's like Scully, right? Like, Scully sees the craziest shit day in and day out, week after week, and still doesn't believe in... like, Indiana Jones has seen the Ark vacuuming up souls, right? Giant pillars of fire. And he's I don't believe in supernatural.
He hadn't seen that yet.
That's true. Right, so technically, but he still doesn't get it, right? Yeah. Because in Temple of Doom, which, remember, that's chronologically first, he is seeking, he wants fortune and glory.
Yeah.
Right? But then he learns his lesson that it's not about fortune and glory, it's about altruism, whatever, right? Fortune and glory.
He's like...
Fortune and glory, kid. Fortune and glory.
You betrayed Shiva. Mm-hmm. Remember? And he...
Yeah.
How does he know has Shiva prayer?
I mean, he just recites some Hindu prayer. That's what I'm saying. I don't know, because he speaks a lot of languages, right?
Oh,
because he's a spy.
Okay. Oh, good point. So he got them curse lifted, and the lingam was back in its.
So it turns into a green valley, and right? What?
Temple of Doom. What do you
think? Classics. Yeah, I love these. I mean, how can you not like what you grew up with?
Yeah.
Last Crusade. Now we get Grail lore. We get straight up. We're back to tiny mustache men, and we've got the Gnostic lore of the Grail. So really nothing to do with Christianity. And once again, we get a quasi-Sufist element coming in with this Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword. Right, so when he goes to Venice, this Sufi order of knights, which is odd because this is suggesting that when the Templars came to the Holy Land, they met up with somehow Sufis, right? So the true mystery of the Templars is this Gnostic perennial religion. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, this one starts in Utah. In 1912, and I looked up what the Paramount Mountain was, and it was supposed to be some mountain near Ogden, Utah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So I guess there was theories and speculations about what the Paramount Mountain is, but it begins then in this one with River Phoenix playing young Indiana Jones, and that's interesting because River Phoenix would die a couple years later at Johnny Depp's The Viper Room.
Mm-hmm.
Viper, given the snake sequences. That's interesting.
He is after the cross of Coronado, which he's trying to take from other treasure hunters because he's all altruistic.
Belongs in a museum.
Yeah.
So do you.
Yes, exactly. So this is the scene where he's traumatized by falling into the House of Reptiles.
Mm-hmm.
And
There's a curious sequence too there when they're in the last train car, the caboose, where the magical items are. If you notice that chest that he gets in, it actually has a Baphomet on it. Mm-hmm. It has a pentacle and then the head of Baphomet, and then the box collapses and he runs out the back of the train, which is again there's not really any way that's possible, because even if it's a magician's trick, it wouldn't get you outside the train, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's always these kind of like almost quasi miraculous elements, as you said, where Indy can kind of like he's a miracle worker, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is another example of how magic helps him sometimes, or providence or whatever. But then when he gets back to the dad's house, Sean Connery,
you know me, Marcus, I don't believe in hocus pocus, a lot of magic and folklore. Remember?
Yeah.
He says that to Brody. Right?
Yeah. When he gets back to his dad's praying, and he says, "He who illuminated this, illuminate me." So dad is also...
Yeah, so here we back to the theme of illumination, and Sean Connery, right, his dad, Indy's dad, Henry Jones Sr., is on this obsessive quest to find the illumination, which is the real mystery of the Templars. And so the Grail is not this actual cup of... I mean, it is in the movie an actual cup of Christ, but what the Grail is the moral lessons, in part, that Henry wants to pass on to his son. There's a lot to do with father-son relationships, right? So there's a absentee father archetypal trauma going on throughout the movie. And then Indy ends up reconciled to his father at the end, and that's playing on the notion of Christ as the son and the father and the Grail offering and so forth, right? Because the son is offering, right, his quote Grail to the father. I'm saying in the ideology of the movie, right? The movie is reading it that way, right? The sacrifice of the blood. In this movie, the sacrifice has to do with the bloodlines of the relationship between father and son. And eventually, right, Sean Connery is willing to die for his son, and then the son rescues the father to get it back to the Jordan Petersonian. Right? The son rescues the father, right? And they literally go into the cave to do this rescuing of the father.
Belly of the whale, right?
Pinocchio.
Well, he actually tells his students that magic isn't real, even after he's already seen...
Magic is there, and X never marks the spot.
Yeah.
If we're back, guys, let me know. I don't know what happened. I think there was just a glitch there for a second. So sometimes the internet's cut out. Junior. Are we back? We're back.
We're back now.
Go ahead.
Okay. We're back,
Junior.
and we're talking about, the bronze serpent from the Old Testament is a lesson against turning relics into superstition.
Yeah, so as you guys know, in the book of Numbers, the bronze serpent on a pole, which, according to John 3, is a type of Christ being lifted up, right? The serpent actually ends up later being worshipped, and it's called Nehushtan, and it becomes a stumbling block to the Israelites because they end up worshiping the relic itself. So something can be a relic and be a good thing, but then turn into something superstitious and idolatrous when it's viewed as an end in itself, or some kind of technology, right, that forces God to act the way we want him to, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really what a lot of this magic is, the idea of imposing your will, and the idea of using the divine or the transcendent as a tool or technology to enforce my will on the world, is what really the objects, the relics throughout the franchise become, these tools and these technologies that you can control to become a god. And, the irony is that the tiny mustache man belief and approach is actually correct, right, in the movie, because the power objects really do give you these powers, right? And so it's Indiana Jones's job to just foil the bad guys getting the power, and to make sure that, you know, it's not privatized and it ends up in a museum or something, right?
Mm-hmm. So this one is about the relationship between the dad and son, and that's going to come back in the next one.
Yeah.
And he's going to make all the same mistakes.
He makes all the same mistakes that Sean Connery does.
Yeah.
Exactly. And by the way, this one also has a lot of the Bond references, right? Because we see, like in the very first, or at the beginning of Temple of Doom, we see Indiana Jones wearing the tuxedo in a very Bond-esque discussion with Lao Che. Mm-hmm. Then we see Bond also at times dressed, I think, doesn't he wear... There's some Bondian elements in this one too, right? Because he... when they're on the beach and Sean Connery remembers the poem from Charlemagne, he's like, I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne, right? And then my somebody quoted it. I'm trying to remember how it goes, but it's something like, may the rocks in the trees. May the rocks in the trees. Yeah, he quotes it. I don't remember how it goes. Anyway, but the point is that whole sequence is very close to one of the Sean Connery James Bond sequences when he's being chased by a plane and it's shooting at him, and it's almost, some of the scenes are almost the same, right? Mm-hmm. So that's hearkening back to the Bond film, and Sean Connery obviously being Bond most famously, but there's another sequence too in the MGM Bond, the really oddball, outstanding, not part of the typical Bond franchise. The MGM did one Bond film, and there's a whole sequence where there's a cart chase in India, I think. That's very similar to the cart chase sequence in Temple of Doom.
This one has the spy honey trap.
Oh, Ilsa. Giddy as a schoolboy.
Yeah.
Your father was giddy as a schoolboy. Yeah, Ilsa is a honey trap. Exactly. I forgot. There's more spy stuff. Exactly.
And
she's a tiny mustache man.
Yeah.
Honey trap.
One of the first locations in this movie is the church/library in Venice, and she's talking about the sacking of Byzantium in it. Remember that?
No, wait, I'm wrong. It's not MGM. I'm wrong. What's the the oddball Bond movie? It's Sean Connery. And it's like his last one. I'm sorry, what were we saying?
When they go to the library church in Venice where they find the tomb. Mm-hmm. When they're walking in there, she's talking about the sacking of Byzantium and how there's catacombs under there that were pagan first. And that's where they find the Templar.
Right, what about it?
Well, you were talking about ecumenism and like rolling all of these mystic things into one. So there you've got
Speak up.
Your pagan.
Speak up for them.
Stuff in the catacomb with the religious burial under the church. Remember?
Yeah, so they have another Catabasis where they go down underneath the catacombs, and he says, "Oh, actually, these catacombs are pre-Christian," and then that's where they find the one of the Templars' graves that has the rest of the shield with the inscription as to where the Grail is located. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's another Catabasis pointing out that no, actually, the true Christianity precedes the Christian era. And it's actually a neo-pagan or a pagan mythology. That's what the Grail stuff is, right?
Well, you made a good point about the Fez squad. They're Muslim and it doesn't make sense unless it's Gnostic. How they're protecting the secret of the Grail. Why is...
Right, so they're a brotherhood that I mentioned earlier is who... The idea is that the Templars linked up with these Sufis. Mm-hmm. And then they made a pact together to protect the Grail. Mm-hmm. And they're called, it's just a made-up thing, the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a made-up thing, but it's saying that, the Sufis and the Templars know the true Christianity, right? Which is this underground Christianity, a la the underground underneath the Venice. And you'll notice that when they find that... It's not a church anymore. It's now a library. So a library is a house of knowledge, right? So true Christianity, it houses gnosis and a secret underground gnosis. You see, that's the symbolism of all that.
And then the difference between Ilsa and the other damsels that go on his adventures is that she is a trained spy, and you can tell early on because she's like not scared of rats or being killed, or she's in the tomb water with him.
Yeah.
And she's into it.
It's Never Say Never Again is what I'm thinking about. I think that's the last Connery one. And they brought him back, I think, after they thought they'd already retired Sean Connery, and then they brought him back. And I think this one is unique, yeah, because it's Warner Brothers. So the rest of the Bond films are MGM, and this one is the oddball because it's actually Warner Brothers. And they bring back Bond, and there's these sequences where the cart chase is just like the cart chase in Temple of Doom. So I had to think of which one it was.
I had to look up if Alexandretta was a real city.
Alexandretta!
Yeah. It's in Turkey, I guess.
So, wait. Alexandra, or it's also Iskenderun.
Okay.
So that's like Constantinople is Istanbul. Istanbul was Constantinople. So I think Iskenderun, right, is, or am I getting that mixed up with Tanis?
I don't know.
No, I think I'm right. I don't know about Turkish
but
cities.
He always flirt fights. I don't know. It's kind of annoying. It's like a theme in his movies. They're always like
that's right.
Fighting and
because
kissing.
they call it the Republic of Hatay.
Oh, okay.
Right. When they go to the Muslim...
That's French Syria. So I look up Alexandretta.
No, Iskenderun is the Republic of Hatay, right?
Okay.
So...
Where's Alexandretta?
Well, I assume that's
City
just
in
Alexandria,
Turkey.
right?
No.
It's Iskenderun. See? Told you.
It's in Turkey.
I know, but I'm saying that it's also Hatay.
Oh, uh-huh.
Because these overlapped at this time.
Oh, I see. And that's by Aleppo.
Right. And so in the movie, they go to this Sultan or whatever, the Sultan of Hatay or whatever, and they're like, we'll give you all of this stolen Nazi gold. And he's like, Rolls Royce, 3 liter, 500 horsepower. Right?
Yeah.
And he wants the Rolls Royce. He wants Donovan's Rolls Royce. Germany's just declared war on the Jones boys.
Is that temple in Petra? Or is that somewhere else?
What temple?
When they
Petra
finally...
is what they use. At the
Oh,
end.
okay.
It's not called Petra, but that's where they are.
Right.
In the movie, it's not called Petra.
An immortality technology, the Holy Grail.
Right.
And...
So it's nothing to do with Christianity or the religion. It's that the secret gnosis is that the real meaning of the religion is that these power objects are techniques for controlling nature, controlling space and time, and getting immortality.
And like Masonry, you progress through the degrees of the knowledge because he has to do the tests. Remember, like...
Right, but it's not actually being humble or any of the symbols of the test. It's just knowing the secrets of getting past the tricks.
Yeah, how to avoid
It's a bunch of trickery.
Traps.
Booby traps and trickery.
Yeah. And then, I was wondering, did Elsa pick the wrong cup on purpose the first time to give it to Donovan?
I never noticed this, but you're right, because she smirks when Donovan drinks the Grail she chose.
Yeah.
So she was getting rid of Donovan, which is interesting. So she does kind of like Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah. And then...
And you also see her conflicted, too, when they're doing the book burning.
Uh-huh.
And she's over there, like, conflicted and crying and verklempt. Yeah.
The Grail is full of hydrogen peroxide, if you were wondering. Remember? Because
So you can whiten your teeth with what's in there. It's not going to give you eternal life, but you can...
when he pours it on his dad, it bubbles up.
It does bubble up. Yeah, it's full of hydrogen peroxide.
And then illumination again. Remember, they're like, "What did you find?" And he's like, "Illumination."
Yeah. So and Sean Connery says at the end after, and there's some important sequences there because he calls for the first time Indiana Jones Indiana, which is signifying that he recognizes, okay, I'll call you what you want to be called. Because remember, he doesn't ever want to call him that. He calls him Junior. Mm-hmm. He's like, Dad, it's Indiana. Mm-hmm. He's like, we named the dog Indiana. You're Junior, right?
Yep. And he's like, you're named after the dog.
Yeah. But the point is that he's reconciled to his father finally through this event, and he rescues his father, right? His father's about to die.
Yeah.
He rescues his father. By the way, Pajot had a good point about the rescuing of the father, which was that, because I was asking the other day on a stream, what's the significance of rescuing the father in like a Christian's ethos? And it makes sense. Well, Christ is actually rescuing his human father, Adam. So he goes to Hades, and in the harrowing of Hades, he actually is rescuing his father. So in that sense, you could say, yeah, he's not rescuing God the Father, but his human father, all the way back to Adam, father, you see.
So what did you think? Was that the best one of the trilogy?
Well, it's also a warning against greed and trying to use these things for technology, even though they actually do that, right?
Yeah.
The objects do actually give you these powers, but you have to, be careful. You can't, if you're not a perfectly formed ashlar like the Masons think, right? You're not ready for the power, right?
Right.
What do I think? I think the first three are really good.
Yeah.
It's a fun trilogy.
I think every time I watch Crystal Skulls, I like it more, and even though it's so over the top, goofy. What do you
I think it's really dumb. I mean, it is interesting that there were Soviet spies as well.
Oh, yeah.
And that comes up in the Mark has an essay on this. I'm trying to remember. So the Soviets had one of these programs, which is what the Kate Blanchett Spellco character is supposed to be, right? Mm-hmm. Let me see. I think it was Spy.
So this is like Indiana Jones and...
Yeah, here it is. The Kremlin Psychic Spies. Go ahead.
And the Giorgio Tsoukalos.
Indiana Jones and the Adventure of Giorgio
Grand
Tsoukalos. That's my joke.
Yeah.
Jamie's taking all my jokes tonight.
And the Grand Hancock.
Oh, I got all that stuff with it. Right. So now we get a new layer to the Indiana Jones gnosis, which is ancient aliens. Right. Mm-hmm. And so this was popular at a time when Crystal Skull crap was everywhere. And as somebody mentioned, Dan Aykroyd came out with Crystal Skull vodka. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I've had that.
And on the website, there used to be at the bottom of the website a Masonic symbol.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The square and compass was on the website.
Well,
I remember.
People talk about the Mitchell Hedges skull. Remember that? Crystal
I don't know
skull.
about that. You were talking about it. I don't know about it. What is that?
It's just like this crystal skull from Honduras. They don't know how it was carved, and it has no like carving lines or whatever. And then there's supposedly a skull that they put at the peak of the pyramid in Memphis that is now the Bass
that I know
Pro
about. Yeah, I've
Shops.
talked
Remember
about that a lot. Yeah, people don't believe me when I tell that story, but
it's true.
The Memphis pyramid has one of the crystal skulls at the apex, and that's because the weirdo rich dude that built it, that was back when it was the like a performance center. Now the Memphis pyramid is a Bass Pro Shops, right? But when it was built, check this out. You can still find this article. The rich dude that built it put a crystal skull at the apex. Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
The internet says it's true. This is one of those debunking sites, but it's actually true. I'm not going to read all that. Let me find a different website. No, that's not it.
Pyramid.
Here it is. So here's local Memphis news right here. Told you. Look at that.
I think I heard
That's not I need the full.
they took it out. See, it says put it back, and bad things started happening.
Well, this is some dorks podcast. I just want the news article.
Yeah, the
talking
past
about
of the cursed Memphis pyramid.
But is that because of the skull? Yeah. So read this. What does it say? Go ahead and read that.
It's one of the largest pyramids in the northern hemisphere. maybe among the top 10, called the Tomb of Doom.
Keep going. Read out loud for them.
And is rumored to have been cursed by the removal of a crystal skull. It's also a Bass Pro Shop and located in Memphis, Tennessee.
Keep going.
All these peculiar facts about modern landmarks in America, building with history that is stranger than fiction.
Okay, right here. Here we go.
Which part?
Right here.
Okay. Originally conceived by Mark Hartz in 1954, the Great American Pyramid was once going to be a complex involving 3 pyramids on the banks of the Mississippi as a nod to the city's namesake, Memphis. Were to be built 2/3 scale replicas of the famous pyramids of Giza.
So there is this Masonic element to Tennessee. A lot of people don't know that Georgia and Tennessee, there's all this Masonic stuff everywhere. Like the entire city of Nashville is laid out in a Masonic way. We did a podcast on that many years ago. And it's the same with Memphis. And when you look into this, you find out, oh, actually the guy who built this giant pyramid, I didn't even know that there was going to be, it was going to model on the Egyptian pyramid. You know that? There's going to be 3 of them? Mm-mm. That's crazy. Anyway, he was a weirdo and he was into esoteric jibber jabber, and he thought that the crystals were objects of power. And so he put one in the apex of the pyramid because it would bring energy and power, right? Like occult power to his pyramid. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I don't remember the guy's name. I'm trying to remember what his name was, but was that his name? Like, was that the guy?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm from Tennessee. That's why, if you're wondering, right? We live in Tennessee, so this is part of Tennessee lore. And anyway, it's true. It's crazy and it's true.
And we were talking about crystal skulls, which is a
well, this is when Ancient Aliens was getting popular, right? So Sukalos and History Channel was promoting Ancient Alien stuff.
Graham Hancock. Who else?
Yes. But Ancient Aliens is just feeding into the psyop of, right, all this alien nonsense. And so, shocker, right, we get Spielberg with alien stuff. What, shocker, right?
Yeah.
And that's all, but I've done a million podcasts about the alien stuff being a big CIA, Black Ops, psyop thing. So we're not going to go into all that stuff. But once again, the theme is Gnosis, because Commandant Spelko, when they eventually get to where the crystal skulls are housed, the whole, like, council of them, it's the heads of aliens, right? And they all sort of merge into one, and she looks into the eyes of the aliens and it burns her head apart, right?
Yeah.
So she sought too much gnosis and sought the direct vision of God, but God is actually just a collection of aliens, right?
Who were interdimensional, and they keep on making that point.
Right.
That, John Hurt says that more than once, that they're not from outer space, they're from a different dimension.
Well, there's another curious point I never noticed either until viewing it this time, which is that the Soviets point out that the skull has the power to tap into an area of the brain, presumably the pineal gland or something, that has not been tapped into yet, and that it spurs on human evolution and development. So it's like X-Men. It's like it's going to lead us in the next stage of evolution. So here, the Soviets want it because they actually explain that they're going to be able to have the ability to remote view. Remote viewing is obviously real projects, right? Real stuff. There's a book on this that I was reading recently, The Psychic Battlefield, History of the Military Occult Complex. And so this gets into some of the history of the Stanford research and remote viewing and all those occult studies they were doing. The 1st Earth Battalion and the Ministeric Goats. That's all based on real studies to try to weaponize the occult.
Well, this one starts with the Elvis song. So that's the era that we are now in after Yahtzees. It's Cold War.
We're in the Cold War, yeah.
And 1957... And the first Russian guy that hops out, he looks exactly like Putin, remember?
Yeah, I think they intentionally chose a Putin-looking Russian dude, for sure, to be the person, the killer under Spelko.
So, Cate Blanchett wants the alien from X-Files. The alien autopsy guy. Remember? The rubber guy?
It does look like the alien autopsy guy, yeah.
And so they find him because he's super magnetic. And you were making this point that Spielberg has always been an alien pusher, because this is the Roswell crash guy. And then Indy is an American spy, and the other British guy is MI6.
And we find out he's a triple agent later on, right?
Yeah, so they've been working together the whole time.
Well, he says something like, we spied together or
Yeah.
something like that, yeah. And then we find out officially that when Indy's being grilled about this Soviet break-in to Area 51 or whatever, he says, well, I was a war hero, I was OSS. So, by the way, guys, if you would support the stream by hitting like and share, and you can support us also via Super Chats using the Super Chat function through Streamlabs. Here's the link. I'll put it in the chat right here so you can send us a Super Chat via Streamlabs. But, yeah, so again, proving the point that Indy is actually a spy, and then they have to... I mean, I think that megalithic stuff is neat. I think there probably is truth to the Giants narrative and all that. And I like the idea of forbidden history. And, you know, I remember reading this book back in the day, Forbidden History. This one was fun. And I read Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock. And he has a whole chapter on the Nazca lines. So, and the Nazca lines come up in this because that's supposed to tie into the crystal skulls.
Can you say Gobekli Tepe 3 times?
Ooh, googly titties.
Gobekli.
Ooh, googly titty.
Gobekli.
Titty.
No.
Tanakh
Gobekli Tepe.
Yes. Kotel, by the way, did a stream debunking Gobekli Tepe. For those that haven't seen it.
It was aliens that made that.
Well, again, so were they just looking for... I think they were just looking for whatever was popular at the time, right? Because for whatever reason, crystal skulls were really popular all of a sudden. And, you know, all the George Norrie type radio shows were talking about crystal skulls. And you go in the bookstores and they would have, you know, like, oh, the crystal skulls.
Totally. This is totally coast to coast.
Well, and it's prior to 2012, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Because 2012 was pushing the Mayan calendar, which tied into all this, you know, Peruvian jibber jabber.
Exactly.
And
so,
is Gobekli Tepe or whatever, googly titties, is that in Peru? Where's that at? Bolivia?
No, it's in the Middle East somewhere, like Turkey or Iran. I don't know.
Oh.
It's over there. What did you think about the refrigerator scene? That's your favorite?
No, I don't like this Gobekli Tepe.
Yeah.
You're right. That's in Turkey. Is it one of these megalithic things?
Yeah.
We don't know how they built it. It must have been aliens. That's the reasoning of all these goobers, right?
Yep.
Well, that doesn't even look that's just like a bunch of sticks. Like what? Or I mean, rocks. Like what's the marvel of this? Is it the heads? These heads look pretty cool. How did they build a head like that? Right? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Anyway, I think Kotel has a good stream on this. I think it's that. Let me see. Go ahead.
Well, he gets nuked, so he must have.
Oh no, this bugs
supernatural
me. This bugs the crap
powers
out of me, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just so absurd. Like even if the lead-lined refrigerator would protect you from the nuclear blast, like you would get cooked in there. It would heat. It's like supposed to be 1,000,000 degrees, right? And it throws you across, miles into the air.
And barrel rolls down a hill.
You barrel roll down a hill, and then he gets out, and wouldn't he be completely covered in radiation? I mean, I know they're scrubbing him when he's nude, but you know what I mean.
And the little gophers.
Yeah, this is really dumb.
But he's an American hero, and now he's being harassed by the FBI because they're trying to keep the communists out of academia. Like, that sounds ridiculous.
Well, it's the McCarthy period.
Yeah.
So he's trying to say it's the McCarthy period. Maybe he didn't do a thing on Gobekli Titty or whatever. I don't know. But
go back.
I mean, there's protests in all of these, right? There's or not all of them. There's protests in the next one too, right? They're protesting the Vietnam War in the next one. And here they're protesting communism. So it's McCarthy era.
Yeah. I just think that's funny because they did not win.
Who?
The protesters.
Oh, you mean, well, yeah, I guess, I mean, because communism was ultimately funded by the elite. So it's not coming from another country. It's coming from the top down, exactly.
So this one, I think Shia LaBeouf did a good job. He is Indiana Jones Jr.
Mutt.
Mutt.
I don't know why they call him. Is it because Indiana is the name of the dog, and then so is that why he's Mutt? I never figured that out. I just blew Jamie's mind.
You did.
Junior.
And he was raised in absentia by a professor, just like
so John
Indy.
Hurt raises. Yes, I didn't know this until you hit me to this.
And
he raises Mutt just like Abner Ravenwood raised Indiana Jones, because Henry Jones Jr. was obsessed with his
archaeology,
dead bodies.
Yes.
And Indy is now repeating the same problems, you see. Right?
You do like the graveyard scene. I don't know if I care for that scene. It's borderline campy. It looks like a theme park line. But you like the set.
I like it because it's not CGI, and and why didn't they do if they're going to do that, just do the whole movie with sets. That would have been so much better than so many of these stupid CGI scenes, like the Area 51 warehouse, which is obviously a big computer-generated warehouse, or the CGI swinging of the monkeys in the trees. Everybody thinks that's the stupidest thing ever. I mean, just do the movie sets. Like, if you're going to do the set like they do with the Nazca Line Temple, then they should have kept it consistent. It would have been a lot cooler.
Swinging through the trees with the monkeys, I could have gone without. But I do like when she reaches into the alien head and it's like rubbery and the crystal skulls in there.
That's just because you like. It's satisfying. That's just because you're a huge fan of the Fox alien autopsy video that I covered the other day.
I like it's all jiggly.
Totally not rubber, right? That's definitely a real. Maybe beings from other planets are made of rubber. Did you ever think of that?
Oh, they're jelly beans.
They're jelly beings, like the Atlantis people,
yes.
Right? So Crystal Skulls, not very good. Dumb. It ends up being what?
Well, she quotes Oppenheimer.
Oh yeah, which is weird because people are saying that Oppenheimer is the most traumatic movie they've ever seen. It scared them to death. I mean, like, how is Christopher Nolan gonna make a movie about a nerd the most traumatic? I don't know what people are. Why are people saying this? Is it just maybe it's movie hype, right? Like it's advertising, like viral marketing.
Well, once again, when she captures him in there in the jungle and she takes him out of his rubber body and makes Indiana stare into his face, like he vibes with the skull. Because not
that's because it taps in your pineal gland.
Yeah. And it unleashes X-Men powers, but he is around all of these powerful relics, and I think that's where he gets his action hero.
So
abilities.
He's like Ed and Lorraine Warren, right?
Yes. And
so if you get Annabelle around Indiana Jones, it doesn't do anything.
And this one was kind of like National Treasure too, with the whole City of Gold, El Dorado theme.
Riley, yes, Riley.
Except they weren't.
It is El Dorado.
Yeah.
Except what?
They weren't under Mount Rushmore. They were down south in South America.
What do they call it?
Akator.
Akator. That's right.
So when the Crystal Skull gets returned to the Council of the Wise Aliens, then their spaceship can power up and take off.
Yeah, it triggers the spaceship to fly away. I mean, what?
I can't remember. Did they say they were creator gods or just visitors? I can't remember. From another dimension.
Well, I think we're supposed to think that it's the ancient alien mythos, that the gods that these people were worshiping are the ancient aliens.
I see. Okay.
That's why they have the crystal skulls.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the conquistadors discovered this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because don't they go to a conquistador's tomb or something?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember who it is? They mentioned the conquistador. I forget his name, but actually I've got it pulled up. So they go to a telepathic crystal skull located in Peru. What?
Did you mention that there were actual Soviet spy schools? Like there are several.
Did you not see me pull this up?
Oh, that's it. Kremlin psychic spies.
Yeah. So the Soviets had the same type of Stanford research program, Stargate program, like the CIA had.
Mm-hmm.
they offered Sean Connery a cameo and he turned it down. That's interesting. Did he know it was not going to be good? So where's the plot? I'm trying to find
giant CGI ants getting their heads squished between.
Is that what he said? Or are you joking?
No.
Where's the freaking plot? I know about the audience reaction. Best special effects. Give me a break. Look, Mitchell Hedges' skull.
Yep.
Look, they tried to sue him.
What?
Dr. Jaime Awe sued Lucasfilm, Disney, and Paramount on behalf of the country of Belize for using the Mitchell Hedges skull likeness in the film. Okay, yeah, sure. Good luck with that case. Where's the freaking plot? I'm trying to find out the Conquistador. And there's too much junk on here. I can't find it. Blah, blah, blah. I said this doesn't have the plot on here. Development. Here we go. Mythical city of Akator. Is that a real thing? Let's see if that's a real thing.
It's a mythological city.
Apparently it is. Based on a Brazilian Indian chief, Tatunka Nara. The Chronicle of Akator. So, interesting. So that's supposed to be some real thing. I don't know. I'm just lost in the Crusader thing. Or not Crusader. The Conquistador. I can't find it. It doesn't even say that. They don't care about the Conquistador. Do they?
No.
Anyway, so we don't know. Amazon. Wait, here we go. Francisco de Orellana. That's it. Who's he? I can't keep up with my conquistadors.
Is he real?
Yeah.
Okay.
I used to have my conquistadors memorized.
Oh, okay.
What if you were some total spurg and all you did was memorize and know everything about the
Who did
conquistadors?
the cross belong to that he was...
Coronado.
Okay.
Sorio! I'll never forget that. It belongs in a museum.
He got it, though. He got his paws on that one, didn't he?
No, well, he gives the cross of Coronado to Marcus.
Yes.
Yeah, so he does eventually get it. Correct. Oh, this is in Ecuador. We need to call Tristan up. Tristan, are you watching this?
Go find...
What's the story of Francisco de Orellana?
Tell Tristan to go find Akator.
And, yeah, Tristan, find Akator and tell us the status of the crystal skulls. Is it really ancient alien technology?
She's like, I want to know.
She wants gnosis.
I want to know everything.
She wants gnosis, but it's unbridled gnosis without wisdom.
Yes.
Is the point of this movie.
And she cannot vibe with them at the end, and they explode her brain.
Her brain blows up, exactly. So she got too much gnosis. Guys, if you would, what's up? Nobody wants to do any super chats, support the show tonight? Everybody's stingy tonight. We're dropping you freaking gold Pachamamas from heaven. We're dropping gold Pachamamas on your brain, blowing your mind, and you guys are not super chatting. What's going on? All right, what's up? Can we move past this horrible movie? The movie's dumb.
Dial of Destiny. What did you think?
So, spoiler alert. It is better than Crystal Skulls. So that's the first thing we can say about Dial of Destiny. I made the joke that it's Indiana Jones and the Infinite Milking Machine.
It's a Disney, also Disney Lucas. And
Yes. So, of course, I'm not a fan of Disney, but it could have been better. It could have been worse. So it was. It's a decent film. It's a decent film. What do you think? Decent. It's all right.
I missed Shia LaBeouf. It was kind of.
Well, I want to know what Lao Che's up to. I want to know what Short Round's up to.
Yeah. But
I want to see.
This is the one, like the classic. What would you do if you could travel in time? And everybody says, "I would go back in time and kill Tiny Mustache Man." Right.
Well, that's what you think is going to happen, right?
Like, that would be a movie.
I like that the movie begins with Anna Nerbe again. We've got searching for the Spear of Longinus again, real stuff that So I think I pulled that up here. So this is another article about. This one's about the Grail, but one of these talks about the Spear of Longinus as well. I forget which one. Maybe it's this one. But one of these articles talks about that. Anyway, Spear of Destiny, right? Which is interesting because you think at first it's going to be the Spear of Destiny, but it's actually the Dial of Destiny because it's Archimedes' dial geometry thing that he made that was going to... At first it was going to predict a stellar phenomenon, And then it turns out, no, it actually predicts rifts in time. I don't like time travel movies. And so...
I appreciate they didn't get into timey-wimey paradoxes like they always do.
So that was, and that's spoiler alert, right? So Indiana Jones does go through a time rift, but then he realizes that I don't belong here and this is dumb and I should go back to my wife. Right? So it has a wholesome message at the end, right? Because he's lost since he's lost his son.
Oh, he's lost in time.
He's lost Mutt, and that's why Karen Allen says, are you back?
Right.
Because he's lost.
Exactly.
So he's lost in time, living in the past, and he's traumatized by the past, and he's a captive to the past, exactly the way that he critiqued his dad. Because he tells Sean Connery when they're having that, Led Zeppelin blimp discussion, he's like, "You were never there for me. Old people in the past mattered more to you than me." Right? And so now Indy's in that same position.
That's a reference to a demiurge absentee godfather.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's why the Grail story was a Gnostic loss of the absentee father story.
And now he's a godfather to the girl.
And she's interesting because she's a mix of all of the girls, as we noticed in the other movies. So she's a mix of Marion, Willie Scott, and Ilsa. She's all three of them together. Like, she has the cunning and deviousness of Ilsa. And she's willing to be just sleep with people because she tricks a guy into being her fiance to get money. She's a lot like Marion Ravenwood because she hangs out in seedy bars and drinks, like you said, right? And she's like Kate Capshaw too because she dresses fancy and she has this kind of star quality.
She has a
about
glamour.
Her. Yeah. So the meaning of that and the new little short round character.
But she's also Indiana Jones because she's his goddaughter and she's brave and an adventurer. So all of the other...
she's the daughter of a spy, right? Isn't the Toby Jones character is an Oxford archaeologist spy, isn't he?
Right. And he did the same thing to her that Indiana Jones did to his kid and his dad did to him, which is pour their life into the relics and neglect the family.
Neglecting the being a father, exactly. There's another weird thing too with it being it's a kind of a Petersonian integration of the psyche thing. Because what happens is that Indiana Jones is traumatized and he's almost dissociative or caught in the past. We see him, teaching, but he's miserable. He's drinking in the first thing in the morning. He's a drunk.
Well...
And Karen Allen has left him. They're divorcing, right?
They really played up the crotchety old man in the beginning. Like, he stands up in his boxers and his, old man t-shirt. Remember? And, pounding on kids' doors. And it's the moon landing day or something like that.
Well, it's set in 1969, I think, right? So it's right after the so-called moon landing. And... we think it's the CIA, and maybe it is to a degree because the Mads Mikkelsen character, who's the new villain, says something to the effect that he's behind the program. He's supposed to meet the president, and so he's Werner von Braun because he's behind the space program. He's working with NASA. He's going to get a medal from the president, I guess JFK or whoever. But he shuns that, and he's like, "No, actually, I'm going to find the Dial of Archimedes because." What I want to do is fix where Tiny Mustache Man failed, and I'm going to perfect the V2 rockets, and I'm going to blow the crap out of everybody, right? So he's like a Bond villain again.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Mads Mikkelsen played Le Chiffre, the Bond villain. So he's playing a Bond villain again, just like Hugo Drax was the Tiny Mustache Man Bond villain in Moonraker. Now Mads Mikkelsen's playing a kind of Hugo Drax character who wants to fix the mistakes of Tiny Mustache Man. But he is explicitly... he's Werner von Braun. That's the crazy part. So the movie's about Paperclip, right? And you see this group of assassins that you think is the CIA, but it turns out they're actually working with Mads Mikkelsen, Werner von Braun as part of it's basically the Galen network. So it's like the Reinhard Galen type of Paperclip people. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
He has the perfect villain face.
Yeah, we were talking about how Mads Mikkelsen would never be a leading man. Like, that dude is he has a resting villain face instead of resting bitch face, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's forever. I mean, he was. By the way, Lashif is based on Crowley for those who don't know, but as is Blofeld too, by the way. But the other thing I was going to say about this process of integration, which is bizarre, is that we have this quest to find the plates of Archimedes where he put the code of Polybius, and you got to decode all this stuff, and this whole journey is actually Indy being reconciled to the trauma. Mm-hmm. And there's all these phases that he goes through, kind of like the test of Last Crusade, right? Where there's a stage where they get to the ear of Dionysius. So there's like the hearing, right? So when they get to the ear of Dionysius, he has to solve this mystery, and it's all echoes in there, which is a real place, by the way. The ear of Dionysius is a real place in Italy, which is crazy.
This was crazy because the Freemasons say they're Dionysian artificers.
Right.
So these are the mystery schools and
right.
stuff that became secret societies and that we talk about all the time. So here we have the main one's Cult of Dionysus.
Yes. So when he passes through the Dionysian mystery, then he gets to the stage where it's Athena. And he has this interaction with the Athena statue, and he's like, Athena, goddess of war, goddess of reasoning. And then he realizes that the solution to this dilemma is the secret of Archimedes, which is water displacement, right? So they fill up the pool, which is choking them. So we think this is maybe like the gases where the prophets, right, would
the
Delphi or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so then they pass that test and they move on to where do they go from there? I'm trying to remember. We just watched this, and it's like a 2.5 hour movie, so I'm trying to remember all the different sequences. But
they go to
where do they get the dial? I forget. They got to go to the bathroom or something. But after they solve the Athena puzzle, where do they go then? Anyway, doesn't matter. The dial of destiny is specifically stated multiple times by Mads Mikkelsen to be not just the dominance of space, because he says through his rocket program and through Paperclip and NASA, he's like, we have mastered space. Now we will master time.
Yeah.
Right. So it's moving from space to mastering time. Right. So there's this theme that technology, gnosis, will give man dominance and victory over the limitations of time and space. Just like the Last Crusade was immortality. Now you can be a god. And Matt Mikkelsen says that when I get the dial, I will be God. Mm-hmm. He says I'll be God. And that's because he can change the past. He can go back, but he miscalculates. And they end up at the siege of Syracuse in 200 BC or whatever, right? So they mess up. They go back to the wrong time. And Indiana Jones wants to be frozen in some alternate reality, some alternate time dimension. He wants to stay there because he can't deal with the trauma of the loss
of the present.
Right. And so what's her name? The girl, the Shaw, mm-hmm. right? The daughter of Toby Jones. She like almost forcibly brings him back.
Mm-hmm. She has to punch him in the face.
She punches him in the face, brings him back to the future, to reality. And I actually like this because it's not the stupid, typical time travel crap. It's basically, the point of the movie is, you're where you're meant to be. You don't need to be in some other fantasy time or some alternate world. You're where you need to be, and you need to focus on the relationships that you have now.
Mm-hmm. Someone said Indiana Jones and the Dire of Destiny.
Exactly. We were making all kinds of Indiana Jones jokes, but what did you think of that? It's about him working through his traumas.
Yeah.
And he has to go through this almost an alchemical psychological process to reintegrate, into reality. And that's why Karen Allen says at the end, "Are you back?"
Yeah.
Because he's been gone.
Well, he makes it seem like they're breaking up because she can't get over the grief, but it's actually him.
It's actually him. Yeah.
Is checked out.
Yeah.
From grief.
So, and we don't exactly know what that means. Like, does that mean that like he was dissociating? Did he go insane?
Maybe
like,
drinking?
Was he just a drunk?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So he got his groove back. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Groove. Right?
He leaned in and got his sass back, and he's a slay queen.
Yes.
But he had to actually go through kind of a representation of the old adventures. So he needed a character that was like Willie Scott and Marion Ravenwood,
Like
and
short
Ilsa,
round.
and he needed a short round, right? And so it's almost like he had to relive things to come back. Mm-hmm. It's like when Agent Cooper's lost in the in between, and he has to come back.
Or
in the end, in season 2.
is the whole franchise just a like fever dream of a archaeologist?
in an old folks home?
Yeah.
Indiana Jones in the old folks home of destiny.
What,
Indiana Jones in the Walker of Oblivion.
Delusions of Grandeur.
Indiana Jones in the ventilator of Oblivion.
Yeah. And the oxygen tank of doom.
The oxygen tank of doom. Yeah. So again, better than Crystal Skulls. So there you go. What do you think of the whole franchise overall? Summation. Lot of fun. Grew up with it. A lot of 80s memories. It's fun to go back then and see the reality behind a lot of the films. Would you say the new ones?
I think some of the best storytelling in film ever of all times, and definitely a peak of the 80s and 90s movie-going experiences.
Yeah, certainly the first 3. The newer ones, they seem kind of flat compared to the first 3. Yeah. But I will say that the new one is definitely better than Crystal Skulls. So, would you agree?
Indiana Jones and George Norrie.
Yeah, and the Adventure of George Tsoukalos.
Yeah,
right. The Afro of Destiny, right, from George Tsoukalos. You want to read the super chats? By the way, guys, remember, head on over to chalk.com, which is our show sponsor, and you can get access to the best supplements that are out there. Chalk.com provides you with the cutting edge in terms of adaptogens like the Shilajit. You're a big fan of Shilajit. What did you like about it when you were taking it consistently for like 2 months?
You just get a ton of mental work done. And so if you have like papers to write, if you have projects to finish, if you have to think, I don't know what it is about that stuff. Like you feel good in your body, but your mind feels crystal clear, like you have a crystal skull.
So if you want a straight up crystal skull, there you go.
Yeah.
Good one, by the way. Tonkat Ali. If you want to boost testosterone, head on over and get the Tonkat Ali. That's my favorite. And by the way, it turns out girls can take that too if you want. There's also a list of stacks for men, stacks for women. Use the promo code J50, that's JAY50, to get 50% off all of those products over at chalk.com. Also, guys, we'll be in LA in the next week. So we'll be out there. Hopefully we'll see you guys at the live event. It's still possible to get. There's a few tickets left to the LA event with Jamie Kennedy. It's July 6th in LA. The link is in the show description. So get your tickets, and we're going to have a lot of fun. 5-hour party. You want to read the super chat?
Yep.
Right here.
Tinfoil Hat Girl. Read
$5.
a lot about Jesuits. I'm starting to think that St. Ignatius was really recruited by the papacy to set up a spy ring for the Vatican. His military and money ties. The strange monastic practices and his spiritual exercises, I know Sneck knows a lot. You?
Well, Sneck and I have done lengthy podcasts on the Jesuits. I've read a couple books on the history of the Jesuits. I have the spiritual exercises of Ignatius. They do become a model for certain groups in terms of mind control. They become a model for New Age visualization practices, imaginative prayer. The Royal Society elite actually said that when they set up the Milner Rhodes Secret Society, they would model it on the Jesuits. It doesn't mean the Jesuits run it, but they would model it on the Jesuits and their structure. A lot of the Jesuits in the present day, a la the Wim Hof book, basically are allied with and have worked with the CIA. John Courtney Murray is a famous example. Yeah, I think that they play a key role in the control structure. I don't know exactly about the history of Ignatius himself, whether he was sincere or was actually some kind of recruit. I do think they've been spies and assassins for a long time. That's true. And he was a member of a Spanish mystical group called the Illuminados before that. So very plausible.
Mark Miller, $20. Love you guys.
Thank you, Mark. Much appreciated.
Terror77, $5. Great work, Temple of Doom Synod 2025.
Yeah, so when Pope Francis initiates the next council for the Roman Catholics, it can be the Temple of Doom Synod 2025 with Mola Ram as the new pope.
Okay, TJ, $1. Jay, please do your best impression of drunk Sean Connery.
Junior.
Okay. Mark Milner has tipped $26. What?
No, right here.
Oh. Terry77, $3. The traditional crystal skull liturgical rite, Mirage Men is the real crystal skull. You have to see it.
Yeah, if anybody that hasn't seen Mirage Man, the documentary about the alien psyop, it's obviously the best documentary on that for sure. Right here.
Mark Milner, 26. What is the number one horror movie each of you recommend?
Number one, I mean, Shining is a pretty horrific horror movie. It's, a lot of analysis involved in that. I did a 30, 40-page analysis of it in my first book. So, Eyes Wide Shut, I guess you could say, is kind of a horror movie too. So, either of those might be the top horror movies.
Probably the movie that scared me the most was the sequel to Shining, Dr. Sleep.
Which we have done a podcast
That
on.
was
Yeah.
super creepy. But recently, Evil Dead movie, if you like, I mean, it wasn't likable, but it was scary.
It creeped her out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know about number one, but he said number one horror movie. So
Dr. Sleep for me.
okay, that's her scariest movie. Varela second. Go ahead, right here. Hold on. I don't really. So that's the thing we can't really get into on YouTube. But no, I don't think phyllotism is correct. I think it's erroneous. Right here.
Okay. Nostradamus, $10. Thank you.
Thank you, Nostradamus.
A Hunter, $5. Why do Gnostic, esoteric, religious, pagan, and mystical references, archetypes, mythos, and symbols in film, TV, and media captivate audiences? Many aren't even aware of the significance of the content they're consuming.
Because archetypes resonate with us. Because human beings all relate intimately and directly to stories. Stories are more fundamental to us than abstracted factual knowledge, right? So that will always resonate with people just because of how humans are made. That's why the Bible is mainly stories, right? It's not lists of facts. It's mainly stories.
Good point. Okay. Terry77, $3. Indiana Jones and the Paperclip of Power.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's pretty much what it is, because
Yeah.
Mads Mikkelsen is basically Werner von Braun, absolutely.
Who was friends and worked with Walt Disney?
Bill Donovan.
No, Werner von Braun. Yeah,
and Bill Donovan.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Great.
Thank you guys so much. If you would hit like and share, come see us in Los Angeles, July 6th. Also, if we missed anything in terms of the Grail lore and the mythos of Indiana Jones, also check out, if you want another analysis, Cotel and Baselit Analyzer did a long analysis of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So we enjoyed that. We thought it had some insights. And we wanted to just go ahead and do the whole franchise now that the new one's out. And